Grecian Adventures, a screenplay by Paul S. Roberts, narrated by Don Paul ap Arfon. Part 2. Exterior, Delphi, 3500 BC. The buzzard is ridge-soaring and circling around the Greek wooded hillside. It swoops down fast over the trees and heads for the seashore nearby. In the bay, a dolphin in playful mood is leaping out of the water and somersaulting. The buzzard sees the twins near the shore and calls to them in its own, almost inimitable way. The twins who are watching the dolphin turn to acknowledge the hawk. On hearing its call, they look up. In the sky over the ridge are two paragliders ridge-soaring, and one of them is in the colours of the Greek flag, whilst the other is all blue. This is on a computer monitor. Interior, CAREY's study. CAREY is doing an advanced yoga posture called a shoulder stand, where the back of his head and both shoulders are on the floor, whilst the rest of his body is erect and upside down, with his feet and toes pointing upwards. Pufflet, the teddy puffin, is next to the computer, also standing on his head and doing advanced yoga. CAREY is now lowering his legs and body slowly until he is lying flat on the floor, then proceeds with the two counter postures and finally stands up. He sits down by the computer to work some more on it. The screensaver disappears to reveal two clip art sketches on the monitor. Sketches of a dolphin and a buzzard. Will arrives at CAREY's house, wondering why he was summoned. Yasmina's motorcycle is already there. Must be serious, thinks Will to himself. Yasmina greets him at the front door and ushers him in, and shushes him by holding up one finger across her lips to silence him after he walks into the front room. CAREY is in the middle of the room, practicing Tai Chi Quan, a Chinese martial arts health exercise, like Kung Fu, but in slow motion. He finishes and stands immobile, facing them, legs slightly apart and arms pointing in different directions. He has a sombre expression on his face, and Yasmina has a similar expression. Will asks, "Well, what is it?" CAREY meanwhile jumps up behind the settee now and lands on a balloon which he bursts, while simultaneously blowing through a long extending whistle party thingy which he whips out of his pocket, making a noisy racket. Yasmina happily shouts, "Ee-ha!" a few times. Yasmina shouts this as she bounces around the room. Will joins in with the mysterious festive and happy carnival mood of his two best friends, and skips around the room with them. "What is it? What is it?" asks Will as he tries to keep up with the other two. CAREY suddenly stops and walks somberly over to Will and hands him an envelope. Yasmina now also stands motionless as Will pulls out a business-type letter from inside the envelope and quickly reads it. "Yee-ha!" screams Will happily at the top of his voice and jumps up excitedly, but bangs his head on a lampshade hanging from the ceiling. "Ow!" says Will with his head momentarily painful as he drops the letter in his excited state. They are now all jumping, skipping and bouncing around the room happily again and making as much noise as they can. What Will had read in the letter, which was from a film magazine, was that his clever friend CAREY had won a script-writing competition with his entry, A Subtle Bouquet, with a prize of £2,000 for the winner. CAREY, Yasmina and Will walk down the passenger aircraft stairway onto the taxiway at the tiny airfield at Actyon, Preveza, Western Greece. Night. Georgios, their Greek taxi driver friend, is waiting for them outside the small airport terminal building. Crickets can be heard nearby. Georgios greets them. "Yasu, my friends from Walia, Ela!" Georgios helps to carry some of the luggage, and the four friends walk towards his taxi. Night. CAREY, Yasmina and Will are sitting by a table outside Christos and Maria's Taverna terrace. They are having a meal. Maria, the owner, is flitting between tables, serving other customers. The current music can be heard in the background, coming from a nearby dance club. All three friends raise their Greek wine-laden glasses and say in unison, "Yamas!" CAREY raises his glass deliberately too high and too forceful, so that his drink is ejected into Will's face as a joke. Yasmina and CAREY laugh hysterically. "Sorry, Will," says Carey with a subtle smile on his face. "Prat," says Will almost angrily. Yasmina is still laughing uncontrollably. Will then scoops a potential faceful of Greek dip with a piece of bread and holds the edible projectile in a threatening manner close to Carey's head. Yasmina suddenly grabs his arm and prevents him from hitting Carey with it. "Ah, too good for you," says Will, as he proceeds to eat the bread. They all begin to eat their respective Greek meals, when Carey asks, "So when are we going to Delphi then?" Christos emerges from the kitchen carrying more food, which he places on their table. Carey thanks Christos, "Efcharisto parapoli," which is "thank you very much" in Greek. "Parakalo, how you learn such good Greek?" Carey answers, "Back home in Walia, Ophilos, with Taverna." "So why you look like Greek?" asks Christos. "Mama Walesa, Papa Jamaican," answers Carey. Christos then says in a somewhat nonchalant manner, "Mama Isos Walesa." Then he booms, "Papa Greek!" He slaps Carey's back in a friendly manner on the last word of his sentence, then laughs loudly. Maria wanders past their table carrying plates and smiles at them, whilst Carey, Yasmina and Will also laugh. Carey takes a sip of wine from his glass. Maria then turns to Christos and whispers something to him. Christos laughs and turns to the three friends, saying, "Maria thinks that your friend here," he points to Carey, "is too young to drink alcohol and wine." "He's almost 30, blurts Yasmina. "30? How you look so young?" Christos sounds dumbfounded. Will smiles and shakes his head as if he knows what's coming next, as Yasmina explains. "Long story, but short answer, he meditates." Carey, Yasmina and Will are lying down next to each other on the narrow 6 yards wide tree-lined beach. On the sand behind them are 3 beach balls. "How soon till our Delphi trip then?" asks Carey. "Enjoy the sun and the sand for now, eh?" says Will. Yasmina suddenly stands up and grabs 2 of the beach balls at the same time, holding them up either side of her chest, and shouts, "Hey, shall we play with these?" "They're too big for me, Yas, but I'll play with your balls though," remarks Will as he turns over on his stomach. "Kachki," swears Yasmina in Welsh, as she breaks into embarrassed laughter and throws one of the balls at Will. Will catches the ball, jumps up to his feet, and for the next few minutes they throw 3 beach balls at each other in some random game. Will, who is standing quite close to the water's edge, reaches up to catch one of the balls that flies above him towards the water, but he leans backwards too much and suddenly falls belly up into the sea. Carey and Yasmina are now laughing hysterically. Seconds later, Georgios walks onto the beach and looks at Will splashing about in the deep water by the pebble shore and shouts to him, "Hey, you look like a dolphin that cannot swim! Ha 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 ha!" "Hi, Georgios," says Yasmina. Yasmina and Carey wave to Georgios as Will comes out of the water spitting seawater. Georgios says almost embarrassedly, "My friends, I have a favour to ask you. My uncle cannot walk as well as he used to. He has goats on the hillside to be moved. Ella, there's only a few." Carey, Yasmina and Will are now herding a flock of about 20 or 30 wild goats through the village. One goat is eating apples from a tray outside a supermarket, with Carey telling it to stop. In another street, a goat headbutts washing on a line and drags the clothes on it down a narrow alleyway, chased by Will. Yasmina is enticing a goat with a banana, while some of the Greek men whistle at her while sitting on a nearby street-side taverna. Finally, after rounding up all the goats, Carey, Yasmina and Will are seen herding them down the main street while singing and shouting. Will goes, "Yee-haw!" with Carey and Yasmina singing in harmony, "Rollin', rollin', rollin'," and all 3 shouting, "Rawhide!" Yasmina, Carey and Will are lying on the beach in an extremely tired state after the goat episode. "Can we go to Delphi now?" asks Carey. "No!" shout Will and Yasmina together. Christos and Maria's taverna. Night. Carey, Will and Yasmina are discussing what they hope to achieve during their holiday. They have drinks on the table. Christos is serving other customers around the taverna. "We need a plan if we hope to achieve anything," says Will, trying to control their objectives.
Do we really have to organise everything in such a regimented manner?
Asks Yasmina. Muzaka, Souvlaki and Delphi, says CAREY playfully. What? Says Will as he looks at him. How about a plan? CAREY asks. I just said. Then Will stops in mid-sentence when he realises that CAREY's just making fun.
Why can't we decide each morning what we're doing?
Suggests Yasmina. Will's probably right. If we don't plan ahead, we won't do floorball, says CAREY. OK, let's write everything down we want to do, says Will. Maria emerges from the taverna and serves them with the food that they had ordered earlier. Will grabs 3 serviettes off the table and hands 2 of them to CAREY and Yasmina. CAREY reaches into his little rucksack to fetch 2 ballpoint pens, one of which he hands to Yasmina. Will has his own pen. They all scribble frantically, and less than a minute later all 3 place their respective lists down in the middle of the table. Then they reach out again to the serviettes to read each other's lists. Yasmina goes first.
Cape Lefkatas.
Delphi. You put down Delphi? Says CAREY to Will. I know. I just don't go on about it like you do, says Will, smiling.
I want to do some yoga in Apollo's temple,
chips in Yasmina. Will continues. Everyone does Delphi from Athens. Should be quite an adventure to go from the opposites. Will then stops in mid-sentence and glances again at something that Yasmina had written on her list, then looks at her and asks with a bewildered expression, what is a Preston Rockfield? Yasmina digs into a handbag and takes out a book and places it on the table in front of Will.
This,
says Yasmina. No, Yas, that's a book, says Will jokingly as he looks across at CAREY and shakes his head. Yasmina explains.
He's a writer on the paranormal, Vedic astrology, ESP, telepathy, etc. This is the latest book.
Will does a puzzled look. Yes, but... Yasmina continues.
I'm sorry, I didn't tell you guys. Preston Rockfield lives here. Well, somewhere on Lefkas. I'm hoping to see him.
Well, you see everyone else, retorts CAREY. Yasmina stares sternly at CAREY. Will adds, so apart from singing at the festival, the only other thing we all have in common is Delphi. CAREY brings out of his rucksack the 2 photographs. One photograph is of the Greek paraglider, and the other photograph is of the Greek girl at the wedding. CAREY flings the photographs on the table as a reminder that he and Will have their personal quests too. Exterior, various locations around Nidri and Lefkas town. Yasmina, CAREY and Will are separately seen, asking questions to different people about their individual quests. Yasmina talks to 3 teenage boys. She pulls out a book by Preston Rockfield from her bag to show them who she is looking for. The boys shake their heads as if to imply they don't know what she's talking about. One of the boys tries to put his arm round Yasmina's shoulders though, but she puts his hand near his belly and walks off, as his friends laugh at him. CAREY holds out the photograph of the girl at the wedding to 2 young girls in the street. They shake their heads to imply they don't know who she is. Yasmina walks over to a taxi rank and shows the Preston Rockfield book to some taxi drivers. One driver, though, looks more closely at the book, then points to some location or other. Will is trying to describe what a paraglider is to an interested male shopkeeper. With wide, sweeping hand and arm motions, Will outlines the size and shape of the canopy until his hand knocks off a tray full of fruit onto the ground. End of montage. Will is standing on top of one of the highest mountains on Lefkas. He is looking at the photograph of the Greek paraglider that CAREY had taken the year before. He has a somewhat sad expression on his face, probably because he hasn't yet seen the paraglider during this holiday. Yasmina is now on a hillside outside the village of Nidri, unpacking her paraglider canopy and preparing for takeoff. She then pulls a tissue from one of her pockets and holds it up in the wind to check the wind direction. Yasmina is now strapped into the harness and has just finished her pre-flight checks. She quickly runs downhill into the wind and is airborne within 4 yards. The paraglider flies over Nidri and heads towards a small island almost directly opposite the village. As she flies nearer to the island, Yasmina is searching for the only house there. but she sees it on the further side, behind some pine trees, and with a beach beyond. Now directly over the house, Yasmina turns and slowly spirals the paraglider sharply to land in the courtyard by the house. Someone is watching this perfect landing from within the house, as a silhouette of a person is framed against the window, looking outwards towards the courtyard. Yasmina is packing away the canopy. Then she walks towards the house with everything neatly packed away inside its rucksack on her back. She suddenly hears a middle-aged female voice talking to her from the doorway of the house.
"Were you a bird in a previous life?"
Yasmina says in an apologetic manner.
"Sorry, I'm looking for Preston Rockfield, the famous writer. I thought he lived here."
Yasmina pauses for a moment.
"Are you Mrs. Rockfield?"
she asks. A woman in her late 30s comes out of the house to greet Yasmina. The woman answers her.
"I like the bit about famous. Actually, there is no Mrs. Rockfield, and I live here alone."
The woman smiles at Yasmina, who has a bemused or even confused expression on her face by now. The woman says,
"Come on through. The tea is waiting for us on the terrace."
They walk into the house, along a corridor, and out into the open at the front of the house, which reveals itself to be a tree-lined terrace facing the sea with flowers growing in various places. In the middle of this area is a table with 2 chairs either side of it. Yasmina is led towards the table, where she takes the rucksack off her back and places it on the floor under the table. Yasmina notices 2 cups and saucers and a pot of tea on the table in front of them. Yasmina still has a puzzled expression.
"Are you expecting a visitor?"
she asks. The woman answers her and smiles.
2 cups when I'm alone."
Yasmina then has one of those light bulb epiphany moments and says,
"A male pseudonym. You are Preston Rockfield."
"Yes, it is me," says the woman. Preston waves her hand to a chair that she wants Yasmina to sit on. Then they both sit. Yasmina says,
"I feel foolish now. You knew I was coming to see you."
Preston slowly shakes her head to imply a contradictive response, and then corrects her.
"You knew you were coming to see me."
Yasmina shakes her head in an amazed manner.
"This is so amazing."
Preston continues,
"It's very natural. You just sit down, close your eyes, and relax. Then it happens."
"What?" says Yasmina with another puzzled look. Preston holds the teapot over a cup.
"Tea?" "Yes, please,"
answers Yasmina. Preston pours 2 cups of tea from the teapot as she speaks again.
"Everything and nothing. I believe when you become nothing, you're in tune with everything. The Chinese have Taoism. Do you meditate?"
Yasmina answers.
"I occasionally do yoga."
Sips her tea.
Earl Grey. "To uplift you for your takeoff."
Then with a serious expression, Preston continues.
"Meditate. You'll see a difference. Drugs are the short path to instant highs. Meditation is the natural, pure method. Just because most people don't float off on the astral or see bright-coloured flashing lights at the drop of a hat doesn't mean negative results."
CAREY walks up to the garden gate outside Georgios and Katerina's house in CAREY. In his hand he has a piece of paper with directions to find the house on it. CAREY takes a final look at the directions again, and then folds the paper and places it in his pocket. CAREY has a rucksack on his back, then struggles to open the gate with bits of kitchen towel, the explanation of which is a long story in itself. Katerina then appears from within the house and sees him, walks up to the gate and opens it to allow him in, as she greets him with a friendly "CAREY!" CAREY and Katerina shake hands. "You remember me?" says CAREY. CAREY and Katerina have just entered the lounge. Georgios enters the room from an opposite doorway.
"Ah, my really good friend from Walia."
Georgios goes towards CAREY and gives him a big continental hug. "Georgios," says CAREY, "will you be able to drive us to Delphi soon?"
"No problem. You want to go Avrio? Eh, Katerina? Ha ha ha."
Katerina speaks to CAREY in Greek, as her English is pretty non-existent.
"CAREY, ένα Nescafe παρακαλώ."
Katerina and Georgios sit down on some hard-back chairs. CAREY is pointed to a sofa-type chair. He takes off his rucksack and places it on the floor beside the chair that he sits on. Georgios suddenly jumps to his feet and dashes off towards a cupboard and brings out a bottle of some kind of drink. Katerina then gets up and goes over to a cupboard to fetch 3 glasses for the drinks. Georgios stands nearby, admiring the bottle, as if he is infatuated with it. "Is that some kind of special Greek wine?" asks CAREY.
All Greek wine is special, my friend, but for this special occasion, German liqueur.
Preston Rockfield and Yasmina are still talking on the terrace. Yasmina says,
If I don't go now, it'll be too dark to land when I get back. No runway lights in Nidri.
Preston suggests,
Why don't you stay the night?
Yasmina answers with an apprehensive look.
Next time. You've been very kind as it is.
Preston says,
Before you go, I'll sign the book you brought with you.
A ballpoint pen mysteriously appears in Preston's hand. Yasmina says,
Now I am embarrassed. I forgot all about it. Thank you.
Yasmina has a bemused expression of,
This woman can tune into my thoughts
on her face. She then brings out of her pocket the author's latest paranormal book and hands it to Preston, who signs it. Preston then says in a profound manner, whilst holding the book against her chest,
Tell your friend that he will find his sister. What do you mean?
asks Yasmina. Preston hands the book back to Yasmina. Preston then says,
Earlier, you told me briefly about the 2 boys who came with you on the holiday. Yes, Will and CAREY.
Preston leans forward and gently clasps one of Yasmina's hands within her own hands. It is a touching gesture. Preston explains,
Tell the one who's looking for someone. Tell him that he will find the bird he is looking for.
Yasmina says,
You said sister, and they're both looking for somebody. It was just a thought that came to me.
A smile spreads on Preston's face.
It's probably nothing,
adds Preston. Yasmina tries to smile through a mixture of confused expressions on her face. Preston steps forward to hug Yasmina. Then soon afterwards she begins to unpack her paraglider. But as she does so, she notices a light flashing on a yacht out in the bay, followed by a light flashing from the opposite shore. It appears similar to coded signals.
What's going on out there?
asks Yasmina. Preston answers,
The boat arrived a few days ago. Since its arrival, though, some neighbours have been robbed of jewellery and valuables.
Yasmina is now slipping on the harness.
What do you feel?
asks Yasmina with a frown on her face.
Negativity, but an English psychic doesn't interfere with Greek policing and law,
adds Preston. Yasmina frowns again. She's now fully strapped into a harness with a canopy spread out neatly behind her and runs very fast down the beach towards the water's edge. She takes off with inches to spare between her feet and the water. The paraglider circles in the breeze to gain more height for the flight back to Nidri. Georgios, Katerina and CAREY have by now had a few drinks. CAREY reaches for his rucksack, which is lying on the floor, and takes out the special photograph of the Greek girl at Georgios and Katerina's wedding. He carefully hands it to Georgios and asks, Georgios, do you know this girl?
Who is she?
asks Georgios. I don't know who she is, that's why I'm asking you. She was at your wedding, adds CAREY almost frustrated. Katerina leans towards her husband to get a clearer view of it. Georgios hands the photograph to Katerina. Katerina nods her approval. Perifemi, which means something nice in Greek. Georgios and Katerina shake their heads and mutter to themselves in Greek as they continue to scrutinize the photograph.
We cannot help you, my friend.
Georgios hands the photograph back to CAREY, who places it carefully inside the rucksack again.
Ochi Karia,
says Katerina. Katerina smiles reassuringly at CAREY, who now looks disappointed.
If this girl for you, she will be seen again,
says Georgios.
So for now, forget her.
CAREY nods his head as if to agree with Georgios, but he still has a disappointed look on his face. CAREY suddenly remembers. Oh, I almost forgot. You said you had friends who could lend us some musical instruments? Georgios scratches his head and looks worried.
Yes, musical instruments for the festival. No problem, CAREY. Avrio.
Katerina doesn't appear too happy with her husband's answer and says,
Georgios, Denxero, Santa Maria, Malaga, Soli Stupido.
What's she saying, Georgios? Asks Carey.
She says, do not forget.
Carey smiles as he looks on at him, suspicious of his answer. But the smile now disappears with the knowledge that his friend Georgios, who knows everyone, everywhere, doesn't know who the girl in the photograph is. To be continued.